Well, hi there, and welcome to the top 10 side hustles from year one of the Side Hustle Hero podcast. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works. It's crazy for me to think that a year has flown by already, but here we are at episode 52, where I've curated for you the best of the year. They are in no particular order because they each made the list for different reasons. Some are online, some you need to be out and about in the world. Most are year-round, some are seasonal, but all of them can be lucrative side hustles. Before we dive in, I have a favor to ask. If you're enjoying what you're hearing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and leave a 5-star review at the platform where you're listening to let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thank you so much. Now here are the top 10 side hustles from year one. Number 1 is litter cleanup. Not trendy, not sexy, and it's a side hustle that for the most part is flying under the radar. If I was looking for a business today to start and scale, I would give this serious consideration. It's about cleaning up litter from parking lots and around commercial and industrial sites before they open in the morning. Startup cost is around $100, and you're essentially being paid to go for a walk. In episode 21, This Business is Cleaning Up, Brian Winch tells us how he started and then has grown this business to revenues of over $600,000 a year. In the early days of doing the business himself, he took it to $100,000. But then to scale it, he spent time securing contracts and then subcontracting out the work. So it's very scalable. And if I was subcontracting out the work, I would definitely be looking to people who are retired or semi-retired, who are early risers, reliable, like to stay active, and who would appreciate being paid to go for a walk and pick up trash. If you're doing the number crunching to determine if this business is for you, Brian suggests using $30 to $50 an hour. But as every market is different, you'll want to find out what the pricing is in your local area. One of the reasons his clients are such fans is this. When he's picking up trash around their property, if he happens to notice something that would need the attention of the property owner or manager, like new graffiti or a broken window, he'll take a photo and send it to his client to give him a heads up. It's an invaluable service to the client, yet costs Brian only the amount of time it takes to grab a photo or two and send a quick text. It's a brilliant way to develop a great relationship. Top side hustle number 2 is making money in the sharing economy. We packed a lot of ideas into this 2-part episode with Massey.
One of the things, if you go back and study any of the pandemics, what you'll notice is there's fundamental changes to how real estate specifically gets used after a pandemic as opposed to before. And that has and is having its effect everywhere. And then you combine that with technology. Now what we've got is this concept of idle assets and asset-light business models taking over the world because everything can be shared. It's like these are the things that unlock opportunity for, honestly, everyone.
Jay was all but retired at the age of 38 when one of his students asked what he knew about short-term rentals. While the answer at the time was not very much, he started looking into the model and was astounded at the opportunities. He talked about his own short-term rental business, STR, and went on to explain how you can establish a short-term rental hustle without even owning a property. There are property owners out there who would love to relinquish the perceived and real headache of having to deal with renters and the work that needs to be done between guest stays. It was interesting timing for me as just before that interview, I was having lunch with someone who owned a property who basically said just that. She said, I would love for someone to run a property I own as a short-term rental and deal with everything and just pay me something per month. What was a real eye-opener for me is how Jay leverages the income-producing opportunities once a person is in the STR. He looks at his properties as a distribution service to maximize revenue. So he's working towards having pretty much everything in his units for sale. The artwork? Yep, it's there on consignment. And as the renter, you can buy it. Love that bed you're sleeping in? Click on the link he provides. You buy the bed, he gets a commission. In part 2, I asked him about how towns and municipalities and cities were cracking down on short-term rentals, and he suggested looking at the wording. Look at what defines an STR. In my area, it's often 30 days. So anything over that is okay.
All of these opportunities exist and are in the extended stay category that would allow anyone who wants to be able to build a very, very nice 6 and 7 figure situation for themselves in relatively little time.
And Jay gives a lot of examples of groups needing stays over 30 days. Movie crews, medical specialists. He sees what he calls oceans of opportunity everywhere. Jay also points out the opportunities to rent out your house or condo for day use, for example, to content creators who need a beautiful space to shoot a video, and other ways that you can earn money in the shared economy. There are so many platforms out there now to make it easier for you to rent what you already have. Everything from sports equipment to your vehicle to parking in your driveway, renting your pool if you have one. And if you've got a knack for home repairs, you can list your available services too. If being in the sharing economy is of interest to you, check out episodes 33 and 34 with Jay Massey. The next several side hustles are typically seasonal, but all very different. The first one made the list for its uniqueness. In fact, I did not know this was a thing until I met Crazy P. Side hustle number 3 is being a paid sports superfan, episode 28. His role is to get the fans energized and hooting and hollering for the home team.
Dads and sons or moms and sons will come down and go, man, this is fun watching the game with you. You're fun, because I was always clean and positive. No hating. Even now, they want me to do chants about tell them they suck. And, no, there's enough hating in the world. I'm only positive.
Patrick, a.k.a. Crazy P, does this work for the NHL's Vancouver Canucks and the CFL's BC Lions. And one crazy afternoon, he actually did both at the same time. It's a pretty hilarious story of him literally running back and forth between the two venues that happen to be across the street from one another. While this is not necessarily a big moneymaker, it could be a great side hustle for someone who is already a super fan for their home teams and wants to have the ability to energize others. Does that sound like you? Or maybe someone you know? In this Being a Paid Sports Superfan episode, you'll hear what's involved, what game day looks like, and Crazy P's other income sources that are offshoots of this side hustle that can serve as idea generators for you. It's a fun episode. Speaking of fun episodes, here's the second seasonal pick. Side hustle number 4, being Santa. Yes, Santa. We're seeing a much greater degree of diversity in Santas, so it's opening the door to many other people who in the past wouldn't have considered it an option, like our Santa.
I was thinking, I'm never going to do this again. Then I went to get changed. When I went to get changed, this little Hispanic kid hugged my leg and said, Santa, I didn't think you would find me. Now I'm going to have Christmas, and hugged my leg so hard. Every broken piece, Joan, of me came back together that day. I left there in tears, and I cried all the way home. But it all started, too, on the whims of wanting to make kids smile.
You've got to check out the artwork for this episode 29, The Business of Being Santa, because under that yak hair beard is Melissa Rickard. Yes, this Santa is female, but you'd never know it. It's been her side hustle now for 28 years. Some of her Santa friends make upwards of $40,000 playing the role. If this sounds appealing, you could reach out directly to organizations and event planners in your area, or check out sites like hiresanta.com. This would be a great fit for someone who is a lover of all things Christmas and prefers something seasonal rather than ongoing 12 months of the year. In addition to Santa, hey, maybe there are other seasonal characters you could portray. Hello, Easter Bunny. You get the idea. Top side hustle number 5 is one more seasonal venture that you could expand to be a year-round side hustle, and that's inspired by episode 51, Serving Up a Sizzling Seasonal Success. It features the guys from Poncho's Tacos.
The first weekend, it was like, we didn't know really how to plan it out because we didn't know, how many people was going to want our food. But quickly we realized, hey, we got to bring in more. But then, yeah, that just really caught us off guard like the first week because we sold it really quick, like an hour or two. Definitely missed out a bit on like the first grand opening weekend.
They are a group of 5 18-year-olds who run a birria taco stand at a night market that's only open during the evening on weekends. And it's seasonal, running just over 5 months a year. Expected attendance at this year's market is more than 1 million visitors. When you crunch the numbers, the earnings can be pretty impressive. Have you ever thought about selling a product face-to-face to consumer? Then a seasonal market might be for you. It's an excellent way to test your product, get feedback from your customer, hone your message, practice your sales pitch, and test your pricing. And some products go on to scale in a big way. When Kavita Shukla started her company, Fenu Green, which makes fresh paper, she started selling at the local farmers market. And today, it's used by farmers and families across the globe to keep fruits and vegetables fresher longer. She's been written up in Fast Company, Time, and in 2014, Kavita made the list of Forbes 30 Under 30 social entrepreneurs for her efforts. All with sales beginning at her local farmers market. Just this past weekend at a market, I bought a food product and started talking to the vendor. Turns out he was the owner. And while his products are now carried by Whole Foods, he still does the markets. I'll be featuring him and his wife in an episode later this year because it started as a side hustle, selling the product out of the trunk of their car and at markets. On opening weekend of the market for Poncho's Tacos, it wasn't the first time they were selling tacos to the public. In the months leading up to the market, they made a point of setting up pop-up taco stands at select venues and events. It was a smart way to test their procedures and to discover things that they just hadn't thought of, and definitely to test various price points. Founders Matthew Berta, Makito May, Canido Garrido, Danny Alvarez, and Henry have done so many things right, it's a case study in how to successfully launch a venture. So for that alone, give it a listen. The best markets can be tough to get into, but be persistent and be creative. And consider when you are accepted at the market, how are you going to get noticed? Poncho's Tacos sent out press releases to major media sharing their story. A national TV station with a local presence showed up opening weekend and featured this young group of 18-year-olds in the news that night. And of course, you'll be ready with your compelling story to share. Number 6 on our list of the top 10 side hustles in year 1 is a review website. I had so much to talk about with Chuck Temple, founder of multiple 7-figure businesses, that we split it into 2 episodes. In episode 44, we focus on his electric scooter guide company.
I asked the community on Reddit, what's missing? What do you guys need in this industry? It's brand new. There's nothing there yet. And they said, like, we need like buying guides. We need a way to like understand how to make sense of this new market of electric scooters because we're into it. But like there's a lot of misinformation. There's websites with stats that are incorrect. It's a big mess. We created our first product based upon what they asked for. And that's how the electric scooter guide was born.
I love this business model. Connect with a product or service that you're passionate about. Then become the industry source that the community trusts for real and honest reviews. There's no inventory to carry, and your cash flow, at least in the beginning, comes from commissions from affiliate links. You become the trusted person for sorting through the way too much information out there. You're curating information. One of the company's website pages features discount codes and coupons available from all the top scooter companies. Of course, that's going to attract traffic to the site. And nice commissions. Chuck suggests that if you're starting a review website, look for a new industry or one with higher value products. He really developed a community of electric scooter fans around this idea, and it was feedback from this community that provided a number of great ideas and initiatives that he followed through with. Check out Building a Review Website Business, episode 44. Top side hustle number 7 is one of our most downloaded episodes for the year, and that's Excelling on Etsy with Rachel Jimenez.
The first Etsy things I put out are terrible, and I look at them and I just laugh. I put something out the other day and it had an error, like in the listing image, a typo. And luckily, one of my customers like pointed it out to me. I was like, "Oh, thank you." I was like, "That's embarrassing," but I'm like, you know what? It didn't stop me from making money. And so I think I want to share that with people because it's like, even I mess up. Like, you do not have to be perfect. You just have to put it out there.
She didn't wait until she felt totally prepared, totally self-assured, and that everything was perfect prior to uploading her first digital product. Instead, Rachel Jimenez went ahead and launched her shop. Then, as she increased her offerings and started to analyze the data on what was working and what wasn't, she was able to quit her full-time job after 9 months, went on to make $160,000 that year, and hasn't looked back. She's a fan of using platforms like Etsy because it provides you a place where your customers already are. There is so much content out there about how to sell on Etsy. I think the reason this episode stands out is a combination of things, from her tips and hacks to increase sales on the platform, but also her strategy for retiring early. And it's clear that she has a "there's always a solution" mindset. She also shares her 5-minute strategy, which is a path to higher productivity. It's smart, it's simple, and it works. So if you're thinking about selling on Etsy or want to scale what you already have on the platform, check out episode 39, Excelling on Etsy. The final 3, rounding out our top 10, are all online side hustles. Number 8 is from episode 27, Scale for Fun and Profit with Sandra Booker. There's a good chance that you have way more talent, skill, and experience than you give yourself credit for. To help draw those out, Sandra has questions for you.
I've always thought it would be neat to be able to say that I created jobs for people. And I was already doing that to a certain extent by helping my clients scale their business. But there's only so many people you can watch. Like, I helped one client go from charging $50 an hour to making $1 million in a year. And I was like, I want that. I want to be able to work only 4 hours a day and go on vacations and all of the things that I saw my clients being able to do because of my services. And then I was like, well, the only way I can do that really is by scaling. And so that it's not all on me all the time. So I decided to scale that way.
A plea from her 13-year-old daughter motivated Sandra to put her talent and skills to work to raise some needed cash. Her full-time job wasn't bringing in enough. So Sandra embarked on an entrepreneurial journey by becoming a part-time virtual assistant, a VA. As that scaled, it was time to quit her 9-to-5 and make being a VA her full-time business. Within a year, she went from $25 to $45 to $50 an hour for VA services. But realizing that a lot of the services she were providing were more big picture and strategic in nature, Sandra shifted to being a virtual business manager for multiple companies and a trainer to aspiring VAs. I really appreciate this episode because Sandra shares a lot of ideas and advice that apply to whatever your side hustle might be. For example, she shares her best delegation secrets, which, I gotta admit, delegating hasn't always been easy for me, but I have made a conscious effort to become more skilled at it. She gives tips on when to hire your first employee or contract worker and how to deal with a potential client in a way that suits them. I also align with her philosophy, her mindset of treating your client's business as your own. And she explains how it improves both client satisfaction and your bottom line. In other words, be in it with them. I think it's one of the reasons she's so successful. One of the fun things she shared, which I found really helpful, was that when she's training someone like a VA, she'll screen share and record it so that that person has something to go back to and watch over and over again as need be. And while that has a very helpful application in the business world, I actually found it helpful with friends and family members who I was trying to teach certain computer tasks. Number 9 is What It Takes to Be a Successful Seller on Amazon with Annalisa DeMarta, episode 14. The side hustle that started with buying books for $1 and selling them at a big markup on eBay morphed into a $5 million brand on Amazon.
I've literally lost millions of dollars in this business, like millions. Like, that's a weird thing to say to somebody. They're like, I've lost, but the resilience to come back to it, you just got to keep trying. And I remember at one point, my girlfriend was like, I was going through a really tough business position. And she was like, how do you guys do this every day? And I was like, well, I got 2 choices. I can either fold it up and sell my house and go live in the middle of nowhere, or I can just kind of keep putting one foot in front of the other and say okay, how do I swim out of this mess? And how do we make it better?
Annalisa has had to do a lot of swimming to get to where she is in business. Just before our interview, she discovered that while there are 2.7 million sellers on Amazon, her company Ridgeline Insights is in the top 0.0005% of Amazon sellers. If anybody understands selling on Amazon, it's Annalisa. In our interview, she reveals what it really takes to be a successful seller on Amazon. She shares the sweet spot of how long you should give your product listing a chance and highlights the most important aspects you need to pay attention to. She walks us through the various ways you can sell on Amazon. For example, she suggests a great way to learn Amazon is to go with arbitrage. That's essentially taking advantage of a price difference between two or more markets. For example, finding a product at Walmart that sells for $5, purchasing that product, and then reselling it on Amazon for $20. But there's also private labeling or black labeling and contract manufacturing, and she talks about the pros and cons of each. I typically end each episode with what I call key takeaways. For this episode, it was difficult to choose which takeaways I'd feature because not only does she share many gems for successful selling on Amazon, but the philosophy behind her advice applies to the majority of side hustle businesses. But I settled on these three things: why and when to jump into a new venture, even if there's the possibility of failure, how to improve your cash flow situation, and how to reframe the feeling of depriving yourself when you're making those smarter cash flow choices. For someone whose company is in the top 0.0005% of Amazon sellers, Annalisa DeMarta has, let's just say, a lot of wisdom to share. I hope you'll check out episode 14, What It Takes to Be a Successful Seller on Amazon. And last but in no way least is side hustle number 10, Reality Check, the truth behind e-commerce success with Melissa Ng. By day, 20-something Melissa Ng is a certified professional accountant working in mergers and acquisitions for a multinational company. Her side hustle is helping entrepreneurs get to where they want to be in their e-commerce businesses through her company, Launchers Academy. Not only can she speak to this from a numbers standpoint, she herself has successfully built a number of e-commerce stores and has been able to remove herself from day-to-day operations.
I think one of the biggest things that people have nowadays because of social media is shiny object syndrome. Try one thing, doesn't work in their favor, and they try to jump onto another thing. But because they have that mindset of, okay, if I don't see success, I'm going to move on to another thing, it's really, really hard for them to actually see success in anything that they do if they're just jumping from project to project to project.
It's hard to be online these days and not see ads from people on sailboats or standing next to their luxury cars claiming to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in e-commerce. They make it sound so easy, right? Well, Melissa is the perfect person to speak to the reality of what it takes to start and run a successful side hustle in e-commerce, and her answer is sage advice for whatever is your industry of choice. Consistency, persistence is what she considers the secret sauce of being successful in e-commerce. And I appreciate her honesty and wisdom when she reveals that when she started her first online side hustle, she had absolutely no idea what she was doing. But she learned, and then she applied what she learned. Over the year, I've had a number of guests comment on the need to stick with something long enough to give it a real chance. Here's a great example of someone who went through that himself. Travis King from episode 46, Cash Flow and Capital from Bland Flipping.
The trouble for me is prior to that, there had been a dozen shiny objects. If I had given any of them like true focus and commitment in a solid year, right? Lock myself in a box. This is all I'm going to do for a year is build a blog or build a flippy, like whatever it was. The reality is I realized probably any one of them would have worked, but I was always like on to the next thing.
What commitment have you given to your side hustle? Or what commitment will you give? At the very earliest stages in the development of Side Hustle Hero, I made a firm commitment to give it a year. Only then would I reevaluate if there would be future years. And I'm thrilled to say, yes, there's definitely a year 2. But if I didn't make that 1-year commitment, there's a chance I might have bailed at some point. As much as I love doing this, it's not been without its challenges. And when we're faced with a problem we can't seem to solve or an issue that seems insurmountable, it's easy to doubt and then step aside and say, you know what, maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. And oh, what's that shiny object over there? Let's go check it out. It can be so tempting. But if it's something that you really want to make happen, stick with it. Find another way, another path. And stick with me. I'll be here for year 2. I invite your comments, your questions, or just share where you're at in your side hustle journey. Well, that's a wrap for today and for the year. Woohoo! Seriously, I find it hard to believe it's already been a year. You'll find a link to our social media on our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you enjoyed this top 10 episode, let me know you're listening and tell me how this podcast is helping you. You can tag me or send a DM on Instagram at Joan Posivy. Thanks for listening, and hustle on.